Now, recently I've been thinking a lot about something a friend of mine, Deval Patrick, once said to his constituents when he was governor of Massachusetts. He said, "Insist from us and from each other a modicum of civility as the condition for serving you." This is what he told voters. Insist on us having a modicum of civility. I think that's something that all of us as Americans have to insist from each other. Our children are watching what we do. They don't just learn it in school, they learn it by watching us, the way we conduct ourselves, the way we treat each other. If we lie about each other, they learn it's okay to lie. If they make up facts and ignore science, then they just think it's just their opinion that matters. If they see us insulting each other like school kids, then they think, well, I guess that's how people are supposed to behave. The way we respect or don't each other as citizens will determine whether or not the hard, frustrating, but absolutely necessary work of self-government continues. Now, I've got daughters that are getting older now, and one of the most important things about being a parent, I think, is them just seeing what you do, not when you're out in public, not when you're dealing with somebody important, but just how do you treat people generally? And it makes me much more mindful. I want to live up to their expectations. And in that same way, I want this democracy to live up to the people's expectations. We can't move forward if all we do is tear each other down. And the political incentives, as they are today, too often rewards that kind of behavior. That's what gets attention. So it will require some courage just to act the way our parents taught us to act. It shouldn't, but in this political environment, apparently it does. We've got to insist to do better from each other, for each other. Rather than reward those who would disenfranchise any segment of America, we've got to insist that everybody arm themselves with information and facts and that they vote. If 99% of us voted, it wouldn't matter how much the 1% spends on our elections. Rather than reward the most extreme voices or the most divisive language, or who is best at launching schoolyard taunts, we should insist on a higher form of political discourse in our common life. One based on empathy and respect, which does not mean you abandon principle. It doesn't mean you're not tough. Rather than paint those who disagree with us as motivated by malice, to suggest that any of us lack patriotism, we can insist, as Lincoln did, that we are not enemies but friends. That our fellow Americans are not only entitled to a different point of view, but that they love this country as much as we do. Rather than reward 24/7 media that so often thrives on sensationalism and conflict, we have to stand up and insist, no, reason matters, facts matter. Issues are complicated. When folks just make stuff up, they can't go unchallenged. And that's true for Democrats if you hear a Democrat make something up. And that's true for a Republican if you see a Republican cross that line. Rather than accept the notion that compromise is a sellout to one side, we've got to insist on the opposite, that it can be a genuine victory that means progress for all sides. And rather than preventing our kids from dating people in other parties, well, I may have issues about dating generally, but we can trust that we've raised our kids to do the right thing and to look at the qualities of people's character, not some label attached to them. And maybe most of all, whenever someone begins to grow cynical about our politics or believes that their actions can't make a difference or it's not worth participating in, we've got to insist, even against all evidence to the contrary, that in fact they can make a difference. And this job of being a citizen of the United States of America, that's a big deal. It's something we should revere and take seriously. Now, Abraham Lincoln wasn't always the giant that we think of today. He lacked formal schooling. His businesses and his law practices often struggled. After just one term in Congress, his opposition to the Mexican-American War damaged his reputation so badly he did not run for re-election. He was denounced as a traitor, a demagogue, an enemy sympathizer. He returned to his law practice and admitted he was losing interest in politics entirely. And then something happened that shook his conscience. Congress effectively overturned the Missouri Compromise, that flawed and fragile law that had prohibited slavery in the North and legalized it in the South, but left the question ultimately unsettled. And stunned by this news, Lincoln said he'd been roused as he had never been before over what it meant for America's future. And so here in Springfield, at the State Fair, he got back in the game. He delivered the first of his great anti-slavery speeches to a crowd of thousands. And over the next 6 years, even as he lost 2 more political races, his arguments with Douglas and others shaped the national debate. That's when he uttered those brilliant words on the steps of the old state capitol that a house divided against itself cannot stand. That this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. He became the first Republican president, and I believe our greatest president. And through his will and his words, and most of all his character, he held a nation together, and he helped free a people. And those victories did not solve all of our problems. He would be attacked at times for the compromises he was prepared to make by abolitionists and folks from his own side. It would be 100 years more until the law guaranteed African Americans the equal rights that they had been promised. Even 50 years after that, our march is not yet finished. But because Lincoln made that decision not to give up and not to let other voices speak for him, and because he held in his mind the strength of principle, but the vision, the ability to understand those who disagreed with him, and showed them respect even as he fought them. Because of what he set in motion, generations of free men and women of all races and walks of life have had the chance to choose this country's course. What a great gift. What a great legacy he has bestowed us. And that's the thing about America. We are a constant work of progress. And our success has never been certain. None of our journey has been preordained. And there's always been a gap between our highest ideals and the reality that we witness every single day. But what makes us exceptional, what makes us Americans, is that we have fought wars and passed laws and reformed systems and organized unions and staged protests and launched mighty movements to close that gap and to bring the promise and the practice of America into closer alignment. We've made the effort to form that more perfect union. Nine years to the day that I first announced for this office, I still believe in that politics of hope. And for all the challenges of a rapidly changing world, and for all the imperfections of our democracy, the capacity to reach across our differences and choose that kind of politics, not a cynical politics, not a politics of fear, but that kind of politics, sustained over the tranquil and steady dedication of a lifetime. That's something that remains entirely up to us. Thank you, Illinois. God bless you. God bless America. It's good to see all of you. I miss you guys. Thank you.